The day my life as I knew it ended began with the sound of a key turning in a lock, a sound so ordinary it held no premonition of the apocalypse. It was a Thursday. I remember that because Thursdays were always my day. My day to buy the good salmon from the fishmonger down on Elm Street, the one with the bright eyes and the twinkling wedding ring, who always wrapped it in a neat little parcel of white paper. It was my day to have a long, hot bath with the lavender oil my daughter-in-law, Chloe, had given me for Christmas. The bottle I kept hidden behind the guest towels because I was afraid of seeming too greedy with it. It was my day to feel, for a few precious hours, like the world was a soft, manageable place. I had just put the kettle on. The familiar hiss of the heating element was a comfort, a white noise that blanketed the quiet of the house. The house, that grand old Victorian on Maple Street, with its creaking floorboards and sun-drenched bay windows. It was the house I'd raised my son, David, in. The house where his father, Richard, had taught him to ride a bike, the little blue one with the training wheels that left scuff marks on the hallway floor for years. The house where I'd held my own mother's hand as she took her last breath, the sunlight from the garden painting her face in a patchwork of gold and shadow. It was, in every conceivable way, my home, my sanctuary. But the key in the lock was turning with a sharp, jarring click that was not the gentle scrape of David's return from work. It was a decisive, official sound. And when the door swung open, it was David who walked in. It was Chloe. Her face was a pinched, pale mask of righteous fury. Behind her, a man I didn't recognize hovered, a clipboard pressed against his chest like a shield. I remember my first thought was a nonsensical one. I forgot to put the towels out. The guest towels, the crisp, white ones with the little embroidered bluebells. They were still in the dryer. It felt so important in that moment, a tangible detail to anchor myself to reality because what was happening felt so utterly surreal. "Hello, Eleanor," Chloe said, her voice cool and precise like a scalpel. She never called me Mom anymore, not unless David was around. "I see you're making tea. I'm afraid you'll have to take it elsewhere." I laughed, a brittle, shocked little sound that escaped my lips before I could stop it. It was an involuntary response, the body's strange way of rejecting information it cannot process. "What are you talking about, dear? David's not home yet. I was just about to, is he okay?" The fear for my son was instantaneous, a primal thing that bypassed logic. "David is fine," she said, stepping into the foyer. The man with the clipboard followed, a silent, ominous shadow. "David is more than fine. He's finally making a decision about his own life, his own future." "What decision?" I asked, my voice thin. I clutched the counter, the cool granite grounding me. "Chloe, please, what is this? Who is this man?" The man with the clipboard cleared his throat. "Mrs. Ashford, I'm a process server. I'm here to deliver official notification of a change of residence and the termination of your tenancy agreement at this address, effective immediately. You have been given a 1-hour grace period to collect your personal effects and vacate the premises." The words didn't compute. They were just a jumble of legal jargon and alien language designed to confuse. Tenancy. I wasn't a tenant, I was the owner. Richard and I had bought this house in 1985. We paid off the mortgage with the inheritance from his father. I had the deed somewhere in the box of important papers I kept in the study. "That's a mistake," I said, looking from the man to Chloe. "There must be a mistake. David, my son, he would never." At that precise moment, as if on cue, David appeared at the top of the stairs. He was dressed in his work clothes, a tailored suit that cost more than my first car. He looked handsome, successful, and utterly remote. He didn't meet my eyes. "David," I breathed, relief washing over me. Tell them this is a misunderstanding." He walked slowly down the stairs, each footfall heavy and deliberate. He stopped a few steps from the bottom, putting a physical distance between us. "It's not a misunderstanding, Mom," he said. His voice was flat, devoid of any emotion. It was the voice he used on the phone when he was talking to a difficult client, a voice of professional detachment. "What do you mean?" I felt the world tilt. The familiar lines of the hallway, the grandfather clock that had ticked for 70 years, the faded oil painting of a hunting dog that Richard had loved, they all seemed to warp and stretch. "This is my house," he stated, finally looking at me. His eyes were cold, the warm brown of his childhood replaced by a flinty gray. "Mine and Chloe. We've been discussing it for a long time. We need space. For our lives, for our family." "But I'm your family," I whispered, the words feeling pathetically inadequate. "Yes, you are," he said without a trace of affection. "And we love you, but we can no longer live with you. You're interfering." Interfering. The word was a slap. I thought of all the times I'd taken care of their children, my grandchildren, when they were sick or on vacation. I thought of the meals I'd cooked, the house I'd kept clean, the silent loans I'd given them to tide them over during rough patches. I thought of my interference in the form of Sunday dinners, babysitting, and picking the kids up from school. "The kids," I stammered. "What about the kids? They'll be so confused." "We will explain it to them," Chloe said smoothly, stepping forward. "They're resilient. They understand that sometimes Nana needs to live somewhere else, a place more suitable." "More suitable," I echoed, my mind reeling. What could be more suitable than the home I had lived in for 40 years? The walls where I'd marked their heights, the kitchen where I'd made birthday cakes, the garden where I'd planted a rosebush for every grandchild's birth. "Alina, we've found you a lovely place," Chloe said, and there was an edge to her sweetness now, a saccharine coating over pure venom. "It's a very nice assisted living facility. The Pines. It's just outside of town, very peaceful. You'll have your own room." The Pines. I'd heard about the Pines. It was a place you sent people you wanted to forget. A place that smelled of disinfectant and boiled cabbage, where the residents sat in their own urine in the hallways because there wasn't enough staff. It was a holding pen for the elderly, a waiting room for death. "You can't do this," I said, my voice finally finding some strength. "I'll call my lawyer. This is elder abuse. You're stealing my house." At this, David's expression flickered. It wasn't guilt, it was a kind of smug satisfaction. "Ah, about that." He walked to the sideboard, the one Richard had bought me from an antique store in Maine, and pulled out a drawer. He took out a folder, thick with documents. "The house, Mom, isn't yours. It's been in our name for the past 3 years." I stared, uncomprehending. "That's impossible." He opened the folder and began reading. "In 2018, in the wake of Dad's passing, you were, how shall we say, struggling, emotionally, financially. You were behind on the property taxes. You were considering taking out a reverse mortgage. You came to us for help." It was true. The year after Richard died had been a blur of paperwork and grief. The taxes had been a mountain I couldn't climb. I had been so lost, so adrift. I remembered sitting in the kitchen with David and Chloe, tears streaming down my face, terrified I would lose everything. They had been so kind then, so supportive. David had taken the paperwork, telling me not to worry, that he and Chloe would look after me. "You signed a power of attorney," David continued, reading from the document, "and a quitclaim deed transferring the property to a trust of which Chloe and I are the sole beneficiaries. We paid off the back taxes and assumed the mortgage, all perfectly legal. Your signature is right there." He held up a piece of paper. I saw my name, in my own hand. A scrawl I barely remembered, signed in a haze of grief and trust. A trust, I had thought. He said it was to protect the house, to keep it in the family. I had been so grateful. I had trusted my own son. "You tricked me," I said, the words tasting like ash. "You took advantage of me when I was grieving." "We helped you, Mom," David said, snapping the folder shut. "We bailoed you out, and we've been more than patient, but we need our life back. We're having a baby, our 4th. We need the nursery, we need the space." A baby, a 4th grandchild, and they were throwing me out to make room for it. The betrayal was so immense, so complete, it stole the air from my lungs. I looked at Chloe, whose hand was resting protectively on her flat stomach, a picture of maternal innocence. I looked at David, the man I had nursed through chickenpox, cheered at baseball games, paid his way through college. He was a stranger, a cold, calculating stranger who had been planning this for 3 years. My world collapsed into a single, deafening point of silence. The hissing of the kettle had stopped. The clock had stopped ticking. There was only the sound of my own heart, a frantic drum against my ribs. And then something shifted. It was a tiny thing, a spark in the darkness of my soul. I thought about the key in my purse, the key to the safety deposit box, the one Richard had insisted we open just in case. Richard, who had always been careful, had always had a plan. He knew the world was a place where people you loved could let you down. He was the one who told me to always have an escape route. A thought, sharp and clear as a diamond, pierced the fog of my despair. I didn't need this house. I didn't need their love, which was clearly never love at all. I had something they didn't know about, something they hadn't planned for. "Fine," I heard myself say. My voice was steady, clear. It was the voice of the woman I used to be before David was born, before I became mom. The woman who had run a successful vintage boutique, who had negotiated with dealers in Paris and London. The woman Richard fell in love with. "If that's what you want, I'll leave." Quietly. Chloe blinked, clearly thrown off by my sudden compliance. She had been expecting a fight, tears, a scene. She had been expecting me to grovel. I saw the briefest flicker of disappointment in her eyes. "1 hour," the man with the clipboard reminded us, his voice bored. I walked away from them, past the grandfather clock, past the hunting dog, my footsteps echoing in the cavernous hallway. I climbed the stairs to the room I had shared with Richard for 40 years, a room that was no longer mine. I took my oldest, most comfortable suitcase from the back of the closet. It was worn leather, the color of a chestnut, a souvenir from a trip to Florence. I packed carefully. I didn't take my best things. They were all tainted, chosen to fit David and Chloe's aesthetic. I took Richard's old wool sweater that smelled of his pipe tobacco and the faded photograph of us on our honeymoon. I took my mother's locket and my grandmother's pearl earrings. I took the clothes I felt most myself in, a pair of comfortable linen trousers, a soft cashmere cardigan, and my old, broken-in brogues. When the hour was up, I walked back down the stairs. The process server had gone. Chloe and David were standing in the living room, arms crossed like sentinels. "I'll leave my key on the hall table," I said calmly, placing the heavy brass key on the polished wood. I had my purse over my shoulder and my suitcase in my hand. "Where will you go?" David asked. It wasn't a question of concern. It was a question born of a desire to control, a need to ensure I wasn't going to cause a fuss. "Don't worry about me, David," I said, meeting his gaze. "I won't be a burden to you. You have made that perfectly clear." I walked out the front door. I didn't look back. I could feel their eyes on me, watching from the window. They were probably expecting me to crumple, to sit on the curb and sob, to call a friend in shame, to beg them to take me back. I did none of those things. I walked the 3 blocks to the bank on Main Street, the same bank where Richard and I had opened a joint account in 1980, the same bank where I'd watched David put his first paycheck in his own account. I knew the manager, a woman named Helen. She'd seen me through many seasons of my life. "Alina," she said, her face falling when she saw me. "My goodness, are you all right?" "I'm fine, Helen," I said, forcing a smile. "Just a little spring cleaning." I reached into my purse and handed her the small, unassuming key. "I need to access my safety deposit box, the one I opened with my husband." She didn't ask any questions. She just nodded and led me to the vault. The bank's air conditioning was a cool, sterile balm after the emotional heat of the house. She turned the key and the heavy door swung open. Inside, there was a single, leather-bound ledger. It was Richard's. He had given it to me a month before he died. He looked so frail in his hospital bed, the tubes and monitors making him seem small. His eyes, though, were as sharp as ever. He'd said, his voice a whisper. "The world is a complicated place. People change. Circumstances change. I want you to have a secret, a little piece of the world that's just for you. Don't tell anyone, not even David. I had taken the ledger, confused. I thought it was his old accounts, a sentimental record of the life we'd built. Now, sitting in the quiet of the bank vault, I opened it. The first few pages were filled with his meticulous handwriting, a log of small investments, stocks, and bonds. But as I flipped further, I saw his real plan. It wasn't just one thing. It was a collection of things, paintings, a stack of first-edition novels, dusty and forgotten in an attic, a set of vintage car parts, a plot of land in Florida that he'd bought on a whim in the 90s, a patch of swamp we'd all laughed about. He itemized them all, along with their estimated current values. He'd bought them cheaply, over years and years, squirreling away money from his bonuses, from side projects I'd never known about. The total at the bottom of the last page made my breath catch in my throat. It wasn't just a safety net. It was a parachute. It was $12 million. He'd bought it all with his own money in his own name, a secret from the family. A secret he'd protected from me. He always knew. He had a distant cousin, a quiet, trusted man named Arthur, a lawyer in a different state. He'd put the assets in a blind trust with Arthur as the executor, solely for my benefit. In case David ever grows a spine made of jelly, Richard had joked. He didn't know how prophetic those words would be. I closed the ledger. My hands were trembling, not with grief or anger anymore, with a kind of profound, cold clarity. I felt the weight of my son's betrayal lift, replaced by the weight of my husband's love. He had given me a gift, not just money. He had given me my power back. I drove straight to Arthur's office. It was a 3-hour journey, but I didn't feel the time pass. My mind was churning. The ledgers, the deeds, the power of attorney, the quiet, slow stripping of my dignity that had been going on for years. All the small ways I'd been made to feel small, unnecessary. The guilt trips for not babysitting enough, the criticisms of my cooking, the way Chloe would rearrange my furniture when I was out. It wasn't about the house. It was about control, and they had finally taken it. Or so they thought. Arthur was a stoic, silver-haired man who wore the same kind of unflappable expression, whether he was discussing wills or ordering lunch. I laid the ledger on his desk. I didn't say a word. He opened it, studied the pages, and then looked up at me over his half-moon spectacles. "Well, Eleanor," he said, a ghost of a smile on his lips, "it appears Richard has been busy. I have all the documentation here. The trust is airtight. Your son and his wife have no claim to any of it. It's all yours, unencumbered." "Can I sell it all?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "I want to sell it all." "You can," he said, "and I know just the people who will get you the best price. It's an impressive portfolio." And that was it, the beginning of my new life. In 1 week, Arthur's contacts worked miracles. A private auction house in New York liquidated the paintings for more than Richard had ever hoped. The vintage car parts went to a collector in California. The swamp in Florida was bought by a developer who was planning a golf course. The first editions fetched a fortune. By the end of the week, the $12 million was sitting in a brand new bank account, in my name only. That was today. Exactly 1 week since I was thrown out of my home. I sit in a modest but beautiful hotel room, the one with a view of the lake that I used to dream about when I was a girl. I look at my phone. I have 73 missed calls, 52 voicemails, 46 text messages, all from David and Chloe. I know what they want. They want me to come back. They want to pretend it was a huge misunderstanding. They want to beg my forgiveness. I scroll through my messages. The first ones were angry, accusations of me stealing their things. The later ones became desperate, unhinged, and then finally they came. The messages I knew were coming, the messages I had been waiting for. The last text message from David read, "I'm sorry, Mom. We made a huge mistake. We're so sorry. We miss you so much. The house is so empty without you. It's yours. We signed the papers. Please just come home. We're family. We can fix this. I love you. Please call me. I'm begging you." It's almost poetic, really, the reversal of power. A week ago, I was the one who was on my knees, figuratively, begging them not to throw me out into the cold. Now they are the ones begging. They know about the money. They must have found out. Perhaps their accountant is smarter than them. Perhaps they simply saw the movement of funds and put two and two together. They realized that the woman they had discarded was not a weak, old, dependent thing. She was a millionaire, and they needed her money. Their grand plans, their fourth baby, their big renovation, their fragile financial empire, it must all be crumbling without my interference. They need a bailout, and the only person who can give it to them is me, the woman they threw away. I watch the phone screen glow in the dark hotel room. I think about the missed calls, all the apologies that Chloe has likely scripted, all the promises they will break the moment they get what they want. I know what I am going to do. I have known for a week. A part of me, the part that is still the mother, the grandmother, wants to answer, wants to go home, wants to pretend it was all a nightmare, wants to hold my grandchildren again and see them laugh. It's a powerful part, full of memories of sticky fingers and bedtime stories. It whispers to me that family is family, that forgiveness is a virtue, that I should be the bigger person. But then I remember the look in David's eyes when he told me I was interfering, the cold, heartless calculation in Chloe's voice when she talked about the pines, the years of quiet manipulation, the forging of my signature, the theft of my home. I think about the vulnerability of grief and how they preyed upon it. They didn't treat me like a mother. They treated me like a problem to be solved, an obstacle to be removed, a resource to be plundered. I made a decision. I pour myself a small glass of the complimentary whiskey from the minibar. I sit by the window, looking out at the glittering city lights. I feel a profound peace. I pick up my phone. My thumb hovers over the reply button. My heart is not hammering. It is calm. I have nothing to be afraid of. My power is not in their hands. It is in my own. I will never let anyone take it from me again. I type out a single message. I don't write a long, emotional essay. I don't unleash the torrent of words I have been holding in for a decade. I don't accuse them. I don't plead. I don't bargain. I don't remind them of the love that I gave, or the time I sacrificed, or the grandmother I was to their children. They know all of that. It is the thing that makes their betrayal so unforgivable. I simply write the truth, the quiet, devastating truth, my final gift to them. The message goes out into the digital void. I see three dots appear almost instantly, indicating they are typing back. Desperation. They have been waiting all night. They are panicking. I don't care. I place the phone face down on the table. I drink my whiskey, and I listen to the sound of the city humming below. The story, as they know it, is over. As for David and Chloe, they will never get their money. They will never get my forgiveness. And they will never, ever get the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. They will have to live with the silence. They will have to live with the knowledge that they threw away a mother, a grandmother, a woman who loved them unconditionally, for a few square feet of space and a fleeting illusion of control. And they will have to live with the burning, awful truth of the final words they ever read from me. I didn't have to yell. I didn't have to scream. The silence was deafening enough. My son made the choice for both of us. He chose a world without me in it. I was just granting him his wish. I finished my whiskey, the ice clinking softly. I walked to the bathroom and brushed my teeth, looking at the stranger in the mirror. But she wasn't a stranger. She was a leaner, just a leaner. For the first time in decades, I felt like myself. I felt like the woman Richard had loved, the woman who could start over, the woman who was free. I went to bed. For the first time in a week, I slept soundly, without a single dream.